And you mentioned pacing as well. And I think that is one of the biggest criticisms this tape has had. And we will go into like the criticism of this. And I do somewhat agree with you, mate, because it's not like we're with Swan a lot solo at the start, getting to grips with like the camera, going around nature. Then we sort of meet them, and the abyss doesn't really come until the latter third, and then the big concert. And I remember when you were playing it, you were kind of umming and ahhing, uncertain, saying, "Are you not like in a rush to get back into it?" And I think I told you, "Oh yeah, I'd hold on," because for me, the final third is the best bit, you know. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, but I have heard a lot of rumblings that the pacing is the issue. I know someone's like made a big video about, oh yeah, tape 1 was real slow. And I guess it's true, like it's a 6 to 8 hour tape, right? And whether it could have got shortened or not, I don't know. But a lot of it did feel like a trudge. That if you replay it, there are certain chapters that you don't look forward to going through. I don't know if that's a fair assessment, mate.
It is a fair assessment. To almost like counter what I was saying, though, there are some really nice down moments. I am thinking in particular when you're like looking through nature, and it's a fantastic example of like getting to use the camera, which I feel like is a natural evolution from, you know, Max taking photographs in Life is Strange. It feels more fitting, and it's certainly more engaging than just watching a little cutscene of Max take a picture, you know. Whereas with this, we're actively holding up a camera, we're picking things out, it really relies on you being observant. And then you've got the added thing on top of that, where you can then craft your own film. Now, for me personally, I've not, apart from that, you know, a few achievements and whatnot, I've not gone into that too much with like making the perfect film. But it's a nice little feature for those that do, and it, you know, it gives you again that sense of character for Swan. It makes you feel more like her, so I'm all for it. But yeah, like I say, as for the pacing thing, I think I played this in 2 or 3 stints, and I was after a little while thinking, okay, like when are we going to get somewhere a bit more significant? So the second half, I think it's really when you find the cabin, that's when it starts to get more interesting, because there's almost like more horror elements that come into it. It's a bit more dark. You've got to look around, and then you start to get the supernatural things come in. So yeah, I feel like the pacing is a very valid criticism, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely think they went for the whole Stand By Me kind of like dynamic, where a lot of it is just, you know, a group of friends walking through the woods a lot, and whether you like that or not, it just depends whether that's your cup of tea, right? But you mentioned kind of like the gameplay, and I kind of want to go into that a little bit of like the whole filming dynamic. Now, admittedly, this might be where my bias comes in, because, you know, sometimes, like, for example, we talk about how you love LA Noire, mate, how that's just a game almost like tailored to you, where you get to be a detective. Yeah. It's set in 1940s, you know, where everyone's wearing like fancy suits and stuff, and I'm like, I mean, this is a game made for Jack. I look at this game and I feel like this might be the game that's made for me. Because if you think about it, you've got punk music, you've got like 90s and kind of like lo-fi and stuff. And then there's like filming and video editing. And I'm like, it's like someone looked at me and they're like, yeah, we're going to make a game for Liam. Which is why, like, from the trailers, I was just sold. And the fact that I have like kind of grown a little tired of some of Deck 9 projects, and I was really excited to see Don't Nod, you know, go back in the limelight and make a game. So like, the film element, admittedly at the start, I did find it quite like, you know, I struggled to kind of understand. There was like some bits where it's like scenic views was one of the things you had to film, and it was just like these giant squares and I couldn't quite find the location. And then like you have to take like 6 like films or something of like graffiti, maybe 10, but it plasters you with like 40. And sometimes you have the camera, and I felt really overwhelmed. There were just a million things to film, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be here for ages. And I think in chapter 5, where you're going around the movie theatre, I was probably there for a solid, like, over an hour, just trying to, like, find everything to film so I could 100% it. And like you mentioned again, mate, you have to explore locations twice, through the camera and off the camera. But it was a nice change. We speak about Life is Strange a lot, because it is the kind of natural follow-up. when like Max had to take photos, admittedly double exposure improved it a little bit where you actually take photos. This game not only enhances it by making it you're filming for like this music band, but not only that, but you can edit the memoirs and stuff. And my favorite thing about it, mate, is the fact that the actual footage that you take later on can be seen through the TV. It's the actual footage that's used for the music video. And I actually just like, obviously as a video editor myself, I just really enjoy seeing stuff I film or kind of like edit and then putting it into a project so it can go out and be displayed in a certain way. And I don't know about you, mate, but I just absolutely love that whole kind of feature.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because, I mean, I did have a little giggle to myself because sometimes my filming was woeful, like as bad as Linda from the casting of Frank Stone.
Yeah.
So, like, do you know what I mean? There was moments, like, especially that one where they're all gathered around watching on the TV, like what you put, and I'm sat there thinking, this is absolute shite. But they're all sat there going, oh, this is so good. So, like, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, I did have a little bit of a giggle at that. But the fact that they did implement that to give you almost as a player that sense of ownership, and again to make you feel more like Swan, I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and like we had a few other things as well on top of that, of just like kind of like exploring your room and kind of like, you know, you got to pet a cat, which is always a plus. There's also like, it's a mode that I've looked at a little bit. I know you've not really seen it, but you do have a photo mode, which I find really cool. It's something we've not really had from any of these games yet, where you can kind of freeze, you know, the frame in place, but then you can kind of have a free flow camera and you can take some really scenic shots or like some shots of the group, and you could later use them in your own projects. And then they have like all these different filters you can use as well. So like if you are more of a photographer than a videographer, it's cool that you've got that element as well. And I feel like Don't Nod went above and beyond in this one in terms of gameplay. We often say that these games, the story is, you know, like, and the choices of where it's at. But I feel Lost Records does a really good job of holding down gameplay to keep you engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? While I'm thinking of this, while we're talking about gameplay, you know, on this channel, one of my big criticisms is like, oh yeah, with Life is Strange, you know, you hit Y and there's a little bit of dialogue and, you know, that's it, you move on. There's so many things to look at and explore. You do get a little bit of that in this, but I think that's where the camera comes in and helps as like a different way of collecting things. And actually, to say that, you know, the collectible mode is very good as well. Like, I think I had 8 or 9 achievements to get once I'd finished tape 1, and I was like, okay, let's go back and get the rest. And it only took me like half hour. So like collectible mode did an absolute solid on that front. But also when you're exploring things, you can, like, especially like talk about Swan's room. I think she's got like a little tub of ibuprofen in there. And when you rotate the ibuprofen, it actually makes the sound of pills like moving around in like the little pot, which I thought was such a neat little detail. So you can see that there are certain things that they've, you know, moved away from in terms of what they did with Life is Strange. And you know what? I think as time goes on, I'm like, it's, you know, maybe I was a little bit harsh on this at the top. I think it's like the positives that I see I do like, but I feel like the negatives stood out to me a little bit more. But I don't know.
No, I mean, that's completely accurate. And, you know, on top of your point as well of like the world and how cool it is, one thing I liked as well is like Life is Strange, when you had like the display of like the writing of, say, you know, where it would have like the little squiggly lines and the handwritten things. I thought that was really cool because that's almost like it's taken out of Max's journal and put into the world. And I thought this was really cool as well. Like a lot of the displays looked like they were almost collaged from like 90s rock magazines. You had like a lot of pinks and like punk writing and stuff going on. And I just thought, yeah, like again, another little cool feature that they've done really well.